Hello everyone, welcome back to How We Felt About Him, Captain Logan.
Remember?
This time we don't have any big major releases to talk about because we did Jurassic World as a spoiler cast, and it ended up being sort of a full-blown spoiler cast. That was supposed to be 15 minutes, and we just ran away with ourselves. Had way too much fun talking about that. I have one new movie that I saw in the theater, Eric, and then we have some requests to do for some older things, and you have a documentary. So lots of different things to talk about.
I do have a documentary. I'd forgotten about that.
I did that to you.
I watched that because, for context,
first week.
This is July 1st.
Yep.
I watched that before we went to the movie, the night before we go to Incredibles 2.
Wow, yeah. Would you remember anything?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I just forgot that I watched it.
The first thing I want to talk about is also a documentary. I went and saw Won't You Be My Neighbor, which is the Mr. Rogers documentary that just came out this week, and wanted to talk a little bit about that. I am a huge fan of Fred Rogers, and weirdly, I'm a bigger fan of the man than I am of his show. I didn't grow up with the show hard. Like, I watched it, but it wasn't like Sesame Street. I didn't watch it all the time.
Yeah, I had the same thing.
And I always loved the parts where he would go somewhere and show you how things are made. And I always liked the bits where he's just like talking to you or singing a song. But I always got bored in make-believe. I never cared about the neighborhood of make-believe.
Is that the puppets?
Yeah.
That's what I lived for. That's what I watched that show for, was to go to the neighborhood of make-believe.
I always wanted to fast forward through that part. And growing up and going back to that show, I get, you know, the lessons and the metaphors and things that he's doing with that, and I realize that a lot of it is quite ingenious.
You know, as a kid, I was like, "You're the man that gets me to these puppets."
That's really funny, yeah. And everybody likes the trolley, but then once the trolley takes us to make believe, I'm like, I kind of want the trolley to just keep hanging out in Mr. Rogers' house. But Mr. Rogers has a philosophy about life and about child rearing that I think is not just good. I think it's the right way to think about things. I really do. And I think if everybody in raising children thought more like Mr. Rogers, the world would be a way better place. I've always thought that. And the last couple of years, I've done a lot of reading and studying about Mr. Rogers, and Fred Rogers is like a real major personal hero of mine. And so when I found out this documentary was coming out, I was really excited about it. I went and saw it, and it's really, really good. It's not what I think a lot of people will expect going in. It's not a comprehensive history. And there are, I think, a couple of other things. I forget what, but I know I don't know if they're like full-blown documentaries or what. I've watched some stuff from PBS that that goes a little bit more into like the behind-the-scenes making of the show, which is touched on, and there's some stuff about certainly, but the focus of the movie is on what made the man tick and what his philosophy was all about, and it perfectly encapsulates that and really gets what Mr. Rogers was all about, particularly when he says that every child is special and that people can love you for just for who you are, and what exactly that means. One of my favorite things is that they go into the criticism that a lot of people have of that, that it's entitled, and that you're telling children that they don't have to improve, and that when they grow up, they'll magically be handed jobs and stuff, and that's just people not getting the philosophy, because that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that human beings have inherent value, and a lot of people don't understand that. And I loved that the movie talks about that, and then we get into that. It's a surprisingly kind of a somber movie by the end, because the big question, and like I don't think it's cynical by any means, and it doesn't feel like a movie with a mission except to draw this man as a person, and importantly, not to saint him, but rather to try to show as many sides of him as we can, because he was a really private person, and people just don't have negative things to say about Fred Rogers. People in his personal life, his wife, his kids, like he was Mr. Rogers all the time. And this movie feels like a very tell-all thing. That, like, if
this is
anything...
a warts and all depiction of the man.
It is. If anything was going to give us any of the skeletons in Mr. Rogers' closet, this movie was going to. And it does, but they're just nothing. It's sort of, what I mean is, you leave the theater feeling like, yeah, he was a real person. He just had major willpower, major control. The things that he got angry about are the things that you would think he would get angry about. Violence on television, cartoons that didn't teach children anything, things that...
Not a fan of, like, He-Man.
Yeah, anything like that. Mr. Rogers, I mean, Fred Rogers hated television. He worked within the medium because he thought that it was a potentially wonderful tool for not just teaching children, but being a good role model for children, and helping with life stuff, not just your numbers and your letters, but like understanding childhood versus adulthood, what life was about and what it was going to be like and how hard it is. And Fred Rogers didn't candy coat anything. We think about, he was such a wholesome person, and it was a very wholesome show, but it was one of the only places that was coming right out and talking to children about death and about divorce. And his first week on television, he's talking about Vietnam. I mean, he just comes right out and talks about whatever's going on.
So he kind of sees TV as like, you don't preach where the believers are, you preach where the believers aren't.
Yeah.
He doesn't like TV, but he's going to go to TV because that's going to be the widest possible audience he can
Well, I think he preach because, I mean, remember, he was a minister.
Oh,
no, it's not
okay.
the wrong word.
Okay.
He used television as a ministry. He was just smart to preach to every kind of person, regardless of race or creed. Mm. So he's not talking about God, but the guiding principles that he gets from his faith are all there. Mm. All Mr. Rogers' philosophy is love thy neighbor. Mm. That's what it is. Mm. And that's the thing that people would misconstrue when he says that you can like someone for who they are. It doesn't mean that people don't have growth to make, and it doesn't mean that by saying you're special that you are entitled to anything or that you should be given it except love. Everyone's entitled to that. Mm-hmm. says Fred Rogers. Mm-hmm. And that was the powerful thing that made that show so huge. And I think he was a master at repetition. He could say the same thing over and over again, and you'd never realize that he was repeating himself. Mm-hmm. And he said the same thing every show. And regarding that, and the movie talks a lot about his timing and his love of silence, and he was a master at the unawkward silence. They do a really cool thing at the end where everybody interviewed, and they don't talk to as many people as I wish they would. They talk to his wife, they talk to his kids, they talk to the guy who played Mr. McFeely, they talk to Joe Nedry's there.
They got Nedry!
Yeah, the problem is there are, obviously, a lot of folks aren't with us anymver. And
that makes sense.
The documentary's made a little late.
Well, I saw a trailer for that documentary, and I was like, I've never seen him that young. I only ever saw the episodes that ran when I was a kid.
Yeah, well, and something I should mention is I learned some stuff. A lot of what's here are things I know already, but I love the way it's presented, and there's interviews from him, from archive footage that they used that I had never seen before. But I've done a lot of research. I've seen a lot of the stuff they show, and I'm really glad that it's being brought out in a more mainstream way, that more people are going to see that stuff. But anyway, I forget where I was going. But they do a thing at the end where everybody that's interviewed, they take a moment of silence to think about someone who has influenced them in their lives, and it's just, the whole thing is made in a really Fred Rogers way, and I really like that. And like his shows, if you go back to those shows, they're paced like nothing else that was ever on television, and they're not boring. But he was all about quiet. He was all about silence, and it's the power of silence, and that's all really fascinating. I said that it's kind of somber at the end. The big question is, how much of an impact did he have really because of all the things that are going on and in the world today, and the lessons that not enough of us took from him, and that hurt my feelings a little bit, because it's true, and you get the sense that he died wishing that somehow he could have done more. Is really the sense you get. And one of the other fascinating things about it is the ways, the different aspects. I never thought of this, and I don't think they're going too far by saying this. And his wife says it too. The different aspects of his personality that come out through the puppets, and they talk about how Daniel Tiger is Fred Rogers through and through, and that as the show progresses, or not as it like this isn't a gradual thing that happens necessarily, but he starts out as Daniel Tiger, and in the last several years, he kind of turns into King Friday, and I think that's really interesting. That there's like this palpable frustration. Like, he's still the same guy, and he's still wholesome, he still treats people right, but it seems like he starts to get a little bit more, uptight and stuff, where he's just kind of more frustrated with the world, and it's a side of him I'd never gotten to see before. And that has to be there, because everybody has that. Mm-hmm. And it was really nice to see that, but to know that he's still who I thought he was. Mm-hmm. That was really important to me. But no, it's wonderful, and I think everybody should see it. Obviously, it's a documentary; it's a thing you can wait on. But I had to see it right away, so I went and saw it. So very, very strong feeling it. I think that there is probably another documentary to be made that's more about the show. Mm-hmm. But it was a wonderful portrait of the man. So there you go. That's my review of Won't You Be My Neighbor? And now Eric is Eric. Why don't you go ahead and do your documentary? Since,
all right, I will do my documentary.
Yeah,
Too Funny to Fail, which is a Hulu documentary about the Dana Carvey show, which is the second Hulu documentary I've watched. Hulu documentaries are interesting. They will let people make documentaries about anything.
Yeah.
The other one I watched is about George Lazenby. That is just someone put a camera in front of George Lazenby, who's the second James Bond. And he tells the story of his life getting to be...
Oh, I guess the Bill Finger one wasn't Hulu, was it?
Maybe.
Was that Amazon?
No, I think it was Hulu. Or maybe it was independent and they
I can't remember now.
And they put it on Hulu.
Anyway, sorry.
But
just when you said that it was the second one, I thought you were going to say Bill Finger, and then you talked about something else.
Maybe it's the third one. No. The second one I watched consciously aware that it was a Hulu documentary.
I'm almost positive that was Amazon. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But maybe the Fantastic Four one was also Hulu. I don't know.
Pretty sure that was made independently, though.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the other one was too. I'm pretty sure that the Bob and Bill one, or Batman and Bill.
Batman and Bill, yeah.
But the George Lazenby one is just they put a camera down, and George Lazenby narrated his life up until becoming James Bond, and then actors acted out. That is that documentary. This one,
that's awesome.
Is a bit more traditional, except in subject matter. So,
because it's the weirdest thing to make a documentary about.
I've always known about the Dana Carvey show. I knew that Louis C.K. was the head writer. I knew that I can't think of his name, Colbert, and the other guy, the guy from The Office, the boss from The Office, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Steve Carell.
Steve Carell, yeah.
I knew that they came from that show.
Okay.
And that's the beginning and end of what I knew about that show before I watched the documentary. I always assumed it was a failed sitcom. It's not. It's a sketch comedy show. Also, if at any point during talking about this I say sketch, I'm sorry. Sometimes I can't choose between the words skit and sketch, and I say sketch. I'm sorry.
Take luck.
It was a sketch comedy show. It was. He left SNL, and he was way bigger than I ever realized he was. Like, there were like newspaper headlines like, "What will he do now?" Like, they show like actual like archived like. I think it was Time. No, it wasn't Time. It was People. It's one of the big ones. And Bill Hader's here. Bill Hader's amazing in this. He just shows up because he was a fan. He's the only person in this entire documentary not involved with the production. He just shows up because he was a fan. And he's like, when I left SNL, there was like a small blurb at like at the end of an article somewhere. When Dan Carvey left SNL, it was the front page, and it's like, what will this master comedian do with his life now? And he went and made another sketch comedy show. It is the most strangely uplifting documentary I've ever seen, because the only reason to make a documentary about something like this is everything that went wrong.
Yeah.
I've watched documentaries like this where like, and that's what I was expecting. Coming into this, I'm like, okay, so this is going to be a cluster. Everyone's going to hate each other by the end of this. Like, it's going to ruin lives.
Or you make something that's about how much of like a cult classic something is that took off later and act like it's like insanely important, because that's what we do, like a Firefly documentary.
And Last Starfighter, we did that with Last Starfighter and Troll 2. The Troll 2 documentary is hard to watch. But so like that's what I'm expecting. Is this? Well, I'm expecting because it's called Too Funny to Fail. This is a thing about failure.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that this is like just everything like collapsing on itself, right? It's not. You know what it is? It's a documentary about a bunch of people reminiscing about what a good time they had, and how it was
Do
just.
They say like they wish it lasted longer, or do they even talk about that?
No, they all definitely wish it lasted longer. Like, there's a point. The sad part of the story is that they get canceled, and they know they're getting canceled. And
you said it wasn't because of ratings, right? Like, didn't you say it did fine?
It is because of ratings.
Oh, okay.
No, it's because of ratings. So basically, what it is
I forgot what you told me. Sorry. Okay.
It was 3 weeks ago. It's okay. So they make this show that's just really weird and out there. What's interesting is watching some of the skits in the documentary. I'm like, these wouldn't be that weird and out there now. But remember, it's like 1996.
Especially because some of them showed up in other things, right?
Yes, yes. Some of them end up on SNL later.
I thought some of it landed on Mad TV. Maybe just SNL.
I think one of them ends up on Mad TV. Maybe. There's a couple.
I thought Ambiguously Gay Duo.
No, that's
was
SNL.
Mad TV. Is
that's
it
SNL.
really?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a couple of skits that they show where I'm like,
okay, so I've not seen that since it was on, but I did see it when it was on.
So it's interesting. So there's a couple of skits that they show, and I'm like, I've seen this skit before. I've never seen it. How have I seen? Did he revisit this? And they're like, nope, they just aired them on SNL because people thought
they didn't remake them.
No,
they took the footage.
They took the footage. They thought it was so funny, people had to see it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the big one is
that explains why sometimes the style didn't feel like it fit SNL. That's weird.
Well, the Ambiguously Gay Duo they bring over and then keep making. They make more.
Yeah, I knew there were multiple ones of that.
So basically, what happens is Dana Carvey says, "I want to make a sketch comedy show."
Because I haven't seen that in like 20 years. Was it just the opening that was animated, or is the whole sketch?
The whole sketch is animated.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Dana Carvey's like, I want to make a sketch comedy show, and there are no limits, there are no rules. And he's talking to HBO, and he's advised not to go to HBO because they think he'll be stifled, or they think he won't like how limited of an audience it is. So he goes to Fox, and they get the
where weird shows go to die.
Yeah. So and they get the time slot right after Home Improvement, which is the #1 show at the time.
Yeah.
And
I forgot that was a Fox show.
And so it's great because one of the things I think documentaries do really when a documentary is done really well about something like this, where it's about like a specific moment in time, is I wasn't there and I don't actually know what it felt like, but they capture it so well.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this must have been what it felt like at that time. And the first episode comes out, and they lead with this skit that apparently people advise them not to lead with. Do not lead with this skit, which is he plays the president, who is at that point Bill Clinton. Decided.
Yeah, what year is this? Are we like
95, 96, maybe 97?
Are we that
it's
late?
in that. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
He got like body augmentation so he can breastfeed animals, specifically animals, and he's breastfeeding like cats and dogs.
Yeah, I wouldn't lead with that.
No, they lead with that, and they talk about like how insane it was. Where like the prosthetic shot milk, and it had to be actual milk. Like, I don't know why. Like, we thought it would be too fake if it wasn't real milk. It had to shoot milk, and they said like you can look at the analytics and like nobody made it past that skit. And then they show like Dana Carvey. It's the most reactionary thing I've ever seen. Where like every episode, they are aware of the perception of the previous episode, and they talk about it, but they never attempt to course correct. Like the opening of episode 2 is just Dana Carvey coming out talking to the audience, and he's just like, you know, she's not gonna get this episode. No, what? None of that. And like he just, but like they didn't stop doing it. They didn't do that skit again, but they didn't
say just as weird.
Yeah, it just kept being weird. It was really fun and uplifting, and I think the whole thing is encapsulated at the end by Bill Hader, who I'm so glad was there. Just one, because he's funny, but also because I think he encapsulates the whole thing where he goes, I think what really resonated with me about it is that it was a show without an agenda. It wasn't angry about anything. It wasn't trying to say anything. It was a bunch of really funny guys that got...
mission.
Yeah, it's a bunch of really funny guys that got together and just said, let's make something weird. And they did that. The unfortunate problem is, it was not for mainstream America.
It should have been on HBO.
But Bill Hader talks about like he loved it. Like he taped every episode because he was like, I knew immediately this wouldn't be on for very long. So I had to have the tapes.
Did they seem to think it would have done better had it been on HBO?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Also, they didn't know what Home Improvement was. One of the guys talks about this. He's like, yeah, Tim Allen was kind of like a risky comic, and like, he was arrested for like cocaine, cocaine dealing, and
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, no, Tim Allen before he's a comedian is arrested for like drug smuggling.
Wow.
It's a whole thing. And you see that if you ever see his mug photo, you assume you're like, oh yeah, of course. He's got a mustache. He's got like a real thick mustache. And he's like, yeah, Tim Allen's kind of an edgy comedian, and like maybe our sensibilities like line up. And they show,
because he seems like the most normal, above board guy now, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No, he completely turned his life around. And he said like after like 3 or 4 episodes, he decided to watch an episode of Home Improvement, and it's like the episode where they're dealing with like a kid brought a gun to school or like something like so it's like a special episode.
After school episode.
Yeah, and he was like, oh, and there's this amazing thing that they do. I'm so glad they were able to get this. Because they show this clip and then they cut to everyone they've interviewed who clearly also just watched this clip and just losing it, just laughing. Where it's like a very special episode of like they say like in a very special episode of Home Improvement we deal with like this and this and this, and like it's like 30 seconds and then it's like, and after that the Dana Carvey show, and like they all lose it. Also they had sponsors every episode who changed every episode, which was the plan. It was like, they thought that was funny. If like every episode was like, Mountain Dew's the Dana Carvey show, Dr. Pepper's Dana Carvey show. And the plan was to change it every episode.
But they couldn't get sponsors?
The sponsors started dropping off, so it was like Mountain Dew, Taco Bell, and by the end, it's the Chinese restaurant that they all eat at. If you're looking for Chinese in New York, in this area of New York, go here. No, it was a delight to watch. It really makes me want to go watch the Dan Carvey show. I don't know if it's on DVD or if it's streaming anywhere, but it's only 8 episodes. Like,
it would be weird if that wasn't made available.
Yeah.
After that movie.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend watching the documentary. It's just a good time. There's like the saddest thing in it is they're all just being like, yeah, we were making something that wasn't really what people wanted, but like they all had a good time. There was no drama. Like no one ever hated anyone. Like there's this real sad moment where like one person like turns to the other person, like apparently like when they know they're getting canceled, they're not coming back for another season. Someone's like, man, I wish this is what we got to do for the rest of our lives. Like, that's the saddest thing in the whole movie. Like, it's a good time. It's a bunch of people reminiscing, and, like, it's really nice. I really liked it. It was fun.
That's cool. Well, Eric, and you can help me out with this. I'm going to talk about a movie that people have been begging me to do a rewind on forever. And
in my defense, I don't think I've seen it since theaters.
It's not going to be a rewind today, because, those aren't off the cuff.
But it is worthy of a rewind.
Well, of course. But, I mean, it is a superhero movie, so it'll have to happen. It would have to happen even if it was crap.
Well, it's a supervillain movie.
But it's not.
I guess it's also kind of a superhero movie.
It's not just kind of. It's very much a superhero movie.
Yeah, you're right.
It's about a villain that turns into a superhero.
You're right.
It's a superhero movie.
Guitar Man.
Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Megamind. This was requested by Malik Myers, who had another thing that he was going to request, and then found out that I hadn't seen Megamind, and was like, well, why don't you watch that? You own it. and you really should finally sit down and watch that movie. So I did. This is delightful.
Yeah.
And it's everything everybody always said it was. People have talked this up really hard, and I always kind of in the back of my mind thought, I'll watch this and be like, yeah, it's okay, but I don't know what all how.
And I've always been worried about that because I loved it, but I haven't gone back to it.
I think it's really great. The thing I'm impressed with most is that it does some things that I want to say are kind of obvious and maybe even cop-outy and work in the context of it, and I don't care. It seems, I don't know, it's a really sharp script, and it seems like a really bold movie at the beginning, and it gets to a more kind of Disney-ish place at the end, and it earns it entirely. Like, I wanted to be annoyed that it wasn't more Dr. Horrible about the villain. That like he does just straight up become a superhero at the end, and he's like saving the day, and he gets the girl, and he does all the right things. And I thought if it went there, I was going to be annoyed with it. I was impressed that we killed off the superhero in the first 20 minutes, and he's a skeleton, and I'm like, oh my god! And then at the end of the movie, he's still alive in his Fortress of Solitude, and he just wanted to get out of the superhero business, and he was tired of, just making the rounds and doing, going through the motions and doing the same thing all the time. And
that was spoiled in the trailer, by the way.
Was it really? That sucks.
Not one of the trailers I saw, but apparently there was a trailer that spoiled that.
Because I knew nothing about this, so I didn't know that was coming, and it turned out that he just threw a skeleton there and then ran away. But it's still a really smart movie even past that stuff. I like that, I'm jumping around, I'm assuming most people have probably seen this that are watching this.
Like, what, 2008, 2009?
It was 2010, weirdly. 2010. I thought, you and I have met when this comes out, which is surprising. But I thought this was like mid-2000s. It was later than I realized. But anyway, so many years have passed now that, like, a few years ago I probably knew when this came out. But, it's been a while. It's been 8 years now. Crazy. But, like, they still are able to fake me out with things like you get to the end and he's got his hologram projector, and there's a whole lot of mistaken identity in this, which is another thing that should annoy me and totally works and is funny all the time. And there's a part where it seems like the hero, Metro Man, comes back, and he's just pretending to be him to create a ruse and surprise the actual villain of the piece, who is a hero that he creates and is not mature enough to be a hero. And it's like soft Chronicle, right? Like, that guy is Chronicle. Yeah. And I say soft. I mean, he's still horrifying in his way. I forget his name. He's Titan. They just come up with the most generic superhero name possible. I know he's voiced by
Jonah Hill.
Yeah, he's great. And he was the only person I knew right away. And I'm like, that's Jonah Hill. I didn't even remember that this was Will Ferrell. Like, once I saw the credit, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, I knew that. But
and Tina Fey's good.
She's good. I didn't know it was her either.
Is it Brad Pitt?
Yeah. Who at first I thought was George Clooney, and I think it's Brad Pitt doing a George Clooney as the hero. But anyway, I'm jumping around. I was impressed that they made me think that it was him, that it was the hero, changing his mind and coming in to save the day, and that they stuck to their guns on that. That he was never really a great hero. He kind of did everything for the wrong reasons, and he's kind of a coward, and he kind of came to realize it. But he comes in at the end in support of Megamind, who is the superhero now, and he's endearing in his way, and he's not thrown under the bus, and it's not the same thing as Captain Hammer. Where and it is kind of that rivalry, right? Where you have the more sympathetic guy who's cast as the villain, and you have the kind of jerk face guy who just wants the world to revolve around him, and he's cast as the hero, and they play their roles, but he's got
like the weird Superman origin.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that. One of them is really the hero of the piece, and one of them is the villain. But in Dr. Horrible, he takes the opportunity to actually be a villain, and gets everything you ever wanted in that really sad song, Everything You Ever Wanted. And this is like the uplifting version of that. I don't know if these guys saw Dr. Horrible. They could have. It's 3 years before it. I wondered that. But yeah, this movie is all about the idea that you always have a choice to do the right thing, and it's about kind of roles that you're cast into versus your ability to be whatever you want to be, and it's and that starts in the most hilarious, ridiculous place possible, right? Where so you said he's got the Superman origin. They both do. They both come down in spaceships as babies, and one of them lands like on Christmas morning in a rich person's house, in a rich family's house, and the girl's like, or the wife's like, oh, you got me a baby, and the man like doesn't even look up from his newspaper, and he's just like, it looked like something you would like, honey. And then they raise the baby, and he's a superhero, and he's really entitled, and he gets everything he ever wants, and then. And this is the most unbelievable thing in the movie, but it starts from this place, and so it's funny, like, it's an internal logic I can buy, but there's nothing that ever gets quite as preposterous or the same kind of preposterous as this. Megamind lands in a prison and is like Bane. He's just raised in the prison. And it's not like a backwards third world country prison, it's just a prison. Nobody, like, checks to make sure that the baby wasn't thrown in prison, you know, for some crime it did. It's just raised in the prison. That's hilarious. So he becomes a villain because everybody expects that that's what he is, and he even
he's raised in prison.
As he's growing up, is trying not to be that, but he's basically told that he's not allowed to be anything else. That's what he has to be, and finally he just falls into it. He's like, well, if I have to be a bad guy, I'm going to be the best possible bad guy I can, which is a really sympathetic place to start your bad guy protagonist from. And he's so Mojo Jojo. He's totally Mojo Jojo, because he ends up winning. But only because the hero decided not to play the game anymore, which I love. So this is playing a lot with classic superhero tropes that I talk about all the time. It's going to be a fun thing to write a rewind about. I've written about all this stuff before, but it's packaged in a really fun, fresh way. And what happens is Megamind ends up getting to take over the city. And he realizes that that's not what he wanted, because he likes the dance. And he likes the role he's in, because it's the one thing he's allowed to do, and people look at him like he's good at it. And so he likes that.
Even though the hero wins some, and he almost wins other.
Right, yeah. And so, you know, we mess around with that trope. I wouldn't call this a parody, necessarily. I think it's a comedy that that plays with all those tropes and turns some of them on their heads, right? And so he is really endearing, and, you know, has a heart, and isn't actually a bad person, and but also there are consequences to bad actions, and so he does things that you learn to do as a supervillain that lead him to trouble, like, you know, pretending to be somebody that he's not, and wooing the girl who is supposed to be the standard Lois Lane type girlfriend of the hero. She is a journalist, but they actually never dated. They just were not an item. Everybody thought they were. They actually weren't an item. I thought that was going to be the love triangle. The love triangle ends up being between those two and her cameraman, who is constantly hitting on her and is obnoxious and gross and all of that, and real stereotypical, you know, antisocial guy, right? And then he ends up being. And I thought this would maybe be too convenient, but he's following her around, and he's just the person that's there all the time, so or at the time, so it works. That Megamind decides to turn into a hero, because he's killed his hero, he thinks, and he owns the city now, but he's bored. Matrosity is great, and one of the
that joke shouldn't work, right? The fact that he mispronounces so many words.
I was going to say that's one of the most fun things about it. School is great. This is a thing that certain movies manage to do with Will Ferrell that really impresses me, where they take his brand of comedy that I generally don't care for, and they put it in my kind of movie, and then it like
Strange the Fiction.
A more like Strange. Well, and Strange the Fiction isn't even a. I mean, it's a comedy, but it's not his kind of comedy. Yeah. But I'm thinking more like Elf, right?
Yes.
Where I say my kind of thing. I don't mean to sound prudish about it. What I mean is like just a little bit of a. Not like gross out humor, and less like least common denominator humor, like something a little bit more clever, right? But it takes all the stuff that he uses in that cruder humor and runs with it in something that's, you know, smarter and, for lack of a better word, more palatable to me. And I realized, oh, he's a really talented guy. You know, like I love Will Ferrell in Lego Movie, both in and out of live action, and that also runs with his brand of humor. But yeah, all the mispronunciations are really funny. Like I said, it's a surprisingly sharp, really witty script, and it's very Pixar worthy.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody watched this movie and thought it was Pixar, I would understand that, except it's a different brand of animation.
No,
certainly.
I'm still in constant tears that this came out the same year as Despicable Me, and Despicable Me was the one that was successful.
No, it's really sad, especially because they're both about supervillains. This one's about a supervillain that actually has a hero.
Yeah.
Which was the kind of annoying thing about this Despicable Me, because it couldn't decide if it was in a superhero world or a 007 world. It doesn't know. To this day, it doesn't know
He's
that.
just a villain.
Yeah.
I think they've settled on Spy, at least based on the trailers I saw for...
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Well, but the problem is it still has costumed villains.
That's true.
And spy movies don't really have that.
No.
So it's weird.
Yeah.
I like the first Despicable Me okay, but it is kind of paint by numbers in a way this isn't. And they just run with the paint by numbers thing. Like, that has become a really, you know, formulaic and at least kind of denominator kind of thing. This is not that. This is also one of those movies that should not have a sequel, and I'm glad that it hasn't.
Yeah.
It's a real standalone thing. I don't know how well it did. I don't know if it's one of those things where if it had been too successful, they would have felt the need to make another one.
I think it did okay. And this is in the run of DreamWorks movies where, like, they do Monster vs. Aliens and Kung Fu Panda and this, and like they're on a good streak for a little bit.
I think How to Train Your Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon,
yeah.
yes.
And
yes.
I've never watched any of that stuff because for the longest time I was on a boycott with them because I didn't like the Shrek movies, and I just had no interest in.
No, they got their act together,
kind of
and they did. Kung Fu Panda's really good. You should watch that because it's Jack Black, and you like Jack Black. And
yeah, I should.
I can't tell you about 2 or 3.
Jeff loves those movies. My stepdad.
The first
Jeff
one's really
loves
good.
them.
You should watch the first one.
Okay, I'll do that.
How to Train Your Dragon is a wonderful film. I don't know if you'll care because it's dragons.
We got to move on. I want to keep analyzing this. I'll do that at some point on a rewind. I really liked this a lot. And
I always thought you would.
Probably nobody's surprised.
And the Minion's great.
I'm glad the Minion is very, very funny. And
Almost ready.
His fake out death at the end totally works. It's really funny because there's water right behind him. He just jumps in it. He pretends to be dead. And then Megamind, because they know each other so well, totally knows what he's doing. He just runs with it. And everybody around them is like teary-eyed and thinks that he's dead. And then he just goes. He doesn't say psych, but he basically just said psych and he jumps in the water behind him. And Megamind's like, how did no one see this coming? There's water right there. Yeah, it's really fun. It's super creative, and I think it's I don't know. I think it's got a really good message too. So yeah, good stuff. Okay. Eric and I are going to review one more thing together, and then I'm going to do one more thing by myself. We've managed to make this a video where you're able to actually contribute, and I was worried because at first you were like, "Oh, is this all you?" And I was like, "I think it is," but no, we've had enough things that we can both talk about. The next thing we're going to talk about for a few minutes, Eric, is Bunraku.
Bunraku,
which was suggested to us by Lone Wolf Jedi of Gotham. Thanks so much for this. What an interesting movie, Bunraku. Would you give everybody a rundown as to what this is? We don't want to run away with ourselves.
No,
we've got to explain Bunraku. We don't need to do a full plot synopsis or anything.
Bunraku is a movie that's a mashup of like
150 different things.
Westerns, samurai movies, kung fu movies, and then also I would say like a just after Technicolor musical sensibility.
Yeah.
Is there anything I'm missing?
With maybe, and I know we keep talking about this with a million other things, but I think it also has to have a little bit of cereal in it too. And there's kind of no way around it.
Yeah. So it's a movie that's like. I'd always been told it wasn't good.
And I guess it's a little noirish in places.
Yes. But some of that just, if I'm right that they're looking at musicals, some of that's just in that, right? Like, it's not the lighting, it's the costumes you're thinking of, and those costumes are the same costumes you're wearing in musicals.
Right, but also just some of the sensibilities of it, like...
It's Sin City.
In places, yeah, it wants to be Sin City without the green screen.
Yeah. But I'd always heard this isn't very good. I think specifically Matt told me this wasn't very good. And when we started watching it, I was like, what's everyone talking about? Why is this having 19% of Rotten Tomatoes?
I didn't feel it from my last movie. But I do.
Okay. I'm also feeling it for Too Funny to Fail with Dan Carvey. Which, by the way, is never said in that documentary. It kind of bugged me. I was waiting for, like, that headline or something where someone said it's too funny to fail. Nobody did. So it's a movie that doesn't exactly work. And I totally get why everyone says it's not worth watching. Or not even that, like, it's not good. Like, you know, just skip it, whatever.
Yeah.
And the movie I had in my head is so different from what this is.
I had no idea what this was. I thought it was an anime. I thought it was an anime at first. I didn't even know what I was getting myself into.
I expected, based on the cover and the fact that people didn't like it, I expected this to be a slightly mystical Western movie with samurai influences that was like just like a chase across the desert, something like that. Like something like Jonah Hex is what I was expecting.
Oh.
This is not that. This is a movie.
Well, I can see why you would think that because like there is like, you know, some stuff about cars and like there's some chases and.
Well, I'm just based entirely on the cover.
Oh, okay.
Which is just like 4 dudes standing together, and I think one of them is holding the orb. Maybe he's not holding the orb. Maybe I imagined he was holding the orb. Maybe I just mixed it up with the Jonah Hex cover. This is a movie that is phenomenally set designed.
Yeah. And costumed, I'd say, too.
Yes. The closest thing that I can think of is it feels like a stage play on a movie budget. Like there's a point where we leave a building and we go into a city, and the entire city is on a set. Yeah. And you're aware of it in the way that you are while you're watching a play, and like these are all fronts for buildings, and like they're not the entire building. And it looks awesome.
And we feel like we're on a soundstage.
Yeah.
And it's even mic'd like we're on a soundstage.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And it's really, really impressive. And I'm not sure we ever hit that height again. They make things intentionally look...
I was real engrossed the first, like, 15 minutes.
They make things look intentionally look poor, so that the bad CG can seamlessly meld with the... They make things look like cardboard, because it's easier to...
That was the first thing I noticed, I was like, this is not great CG, but I wouldn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're intentionally matching it. And then, the way that... And I wish this was brought more to the fore in the story somehow. The way they match that, then, with... I don't even know if I can call it a symbol, but just with the idea of pop-up books.
Yeah, which
that should have been the framing device for the whole movie, right?
And at the very least, it should have been the ending device.
It should have been the ending device.
The end, whatever you call it.
Yeah, because I don't think the movie knows how to stop.
Nope, and it could have just done the pop-up thing.
It's too long, and it doesn't know how to end.
Yep, it's too long. I think the first act of this movie is really engaging, and it feels like this movie's never going to run out of ideas.
And it also feels consistent in the way the rest of the movie doesn't.
Yeah, and it's never going to run out of ways to impress you, and then we kind of stop building sets. Like, I feel like we built sets for the first act, and we revisit some of those impressive sets, but we stopped going to new ones, and it does the thing that a lot of movies like this do, where they...
And it suddenly starts doing green screen when we didn't have any before.
Yeah. A lot of movies I've seen like this do this, where it's like, look how cool this is. I'm like, that is really cool. But I have nothing else for the rest of the movie. And then we get to the third act.
As you said while we were watching it, I feel like we just keep echoing things that we said
while we were watching it.
Yeah, some of these sentiments might be the other person's sentiment.
Yes.
But you said
because the CG thing was yours.
Yeah, well, and this one is yours. We lose the novelty in about half an hour.
Yeah, which is what I was worried about.
The novelty wears off.
And then you get to the third
there are
act.
things that keep bringing me back in, but it's just way too long, and we're not focused on the characters that I'm most interested in.
Ron Perlman is fascinating.
Yeah.
He's a great villain.
As is Woody Harrelson.
Yes. And when we get to the third act, like, here's the thing. The movie's too long, and also the middle is boring. I think the first act and the third act are quite good. Third act's not as good as the first act, but it's better than the second act. There's some stuff I would have done differently in the third act, but it's worth watching. That middle sags real bad.
Yeah.
So bad I wouldn't recommend this to people.
Same here. I know.
I would go with not feeling it, which is a bummer because when we started the film,
I was do it now too, and I hate that. But it's a light one because I'm not gonna like if you're the kind of person that that really likes off the beaten path, like kind of unclassifiable things like this, because I guess I would recommend this to people like half-heartedly that like kung fu movies. You know, those kinds of things?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I don't know if the choreography is exactly good enough for that, but, like, because they're not doing...
I guess what I'm saying is, that's your in, and then everything about it is fascinating. It doesn't work at the end of the day.
And at the very least, watch the first, like, 15, 20 minutes. I would recommend... I'm feeling the first 15, 20 minutes. Then watch till your level of...
You know, right, yeah. Everybody that likes whatever this kind of thing is should pop it in for a minute just to see what it looks like. It's fascinating. Yeah. No, you know who I really would... I don't want to use the word recommend. I think it's too strong.
Yeah.
The people I think would be interested in this the way I was, fascinated by it. I don't know what I'm talking about. Comic book movie people. That's what it is. That's what's interesting about it.
Yeah.
Is all of the things that it's all over the place about. The one thing that is consistent about it all the time is it wants to be a comic book desperately.
I would also recommend it to anybody that's like in the production design field. Like those kind of people.
Oh, yes, of course. I think
would be interested
but,
in
like, I would be remiss if I'd never seen this, given what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way it uses narration boxes is really interesting.
Yes. Yeah. No, in some ways it feels like a graphic novel. It's trying to feel like a graphic novel.
It really is.
And more directly than something like John Wick. Like, John Wick is clearly influenced by graphic novels and wants to kind of look like it. This literally wants to be a visual graphic novel. Like Sin City.
Yeah, well, and even narratively, it's interested in pictures telling stories.
The biggest problem is one...
It is weird that Woody Harrelson has a pop-up book and not a comic book, right? Like, I like that it's a pop-up book.
The pop-up book makes sense with the way the world looks, and if we did something with it. Right. I get why you would go there, but they never actually carry out.
You don't have any of those narrative ideas that hold the production of it together.
Yeah. The biggest problem with this movie is... There are 2/maybe 4 main characters. The fourth one doesn't get introduced until the second half of the film, and while fascinating, isn't there enough before that. I guess there's kind of 5 if you count this minion guy. Because he's kind of the antagonist of most of the movie. The problem is that the 2 main protagonists of the film...
Yeah, but everybody else gets sort of kind of arcs, and that guy's just there to be the heavy.
Yeah.
He's played by Kevin McKidd, who's an actor that I like a lot.
And he's great. He looks cool with the sunglasses.
And I've never seen him play a role like this.
Yeah.
I'll have to at some point show you one of his more typecast roles so you can see the kinds of things Kevin McKidd does. Although, I say typecast, he's versatile. He does a lot of different kinds of things, but I've told Eric this, but he's the guy I really wanted to play Thor back in the day. That was... after Rome, I thought he was perfect for Thor. Sorry.
The 2 protagonists are really vague and vapid, and at the beginning it feels like the movie knows that. It knows that they're siphons, that they're archetypes. But then it tries to build a real complex story, and they're not really that involved in it, nor are they that interesting, and I never really understand them, and so by the end of it, I kind of wish we cut the 2 protagonists out of the film and focused on all the other characters.
The story needs to be simpler to support the weight of the weirdness of the visual world.
Yeah. And
everything is too complicated.
Yeah.
And it comes off self-indulgent. It feels like they had 100,000 ideas, and they should have maybe made 6 movies. Different movies that had nothing to do with each other.
No, they need to do the Star Wars thing. They need to pull it back and hone it in.
I'm not saying this should have been a bunch of movies in the same universe. I'm saying, these people had too many different ideas. You know, what I felt watching this was what everybody complained about seeing Valerian.
Yeah, exactly.
Which Valerian does have that problem to some degree, but not like that.
I just rewatched that.
Yeah?
I still love it.
Does it hold up okay?
Still love it. It's great. Better second time. Everyone should go see Valerian. I'm feeling it on Valerian. Still great. Love it.
You could only go see Valerian for about a week and a half because it didn't perform at all. It was gone.
But he still might make a sequel.
Really?
Because he said there's enough fan interest, and he funded that movie himself. He'll do it again.
That would be so...
I'm so excited that might make another one.
That would be the best.
But no, God, it's so weird because I want to recommend parts of this movie.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not feeling it. I would not recommend it. I don't dislike the time we spent watching it. I just wish it was about an hour shorter.
There's also too many thematic ideas all thrown in a blender, and there's a couple that I latch onto that clearly should have been the crux of it, and then kind of are by the end.
Yeah. I don't know what this movie's about until it tells me what it's about, and I'm like, oh, that's what you thought you were about?
I guess
that's really interesting, but that's not what the rest of the movie's about.
Yeah.
No,
or it was about too many other things at the same time, or just stuff kind of thrown at you, because there's too much of your just really typical like superhero or action hero kind of messages thrown at you.
Yeah, that feel generic, and then you get to Ron Perlman. He's fascinating, and I'm like, I haven't exactly seen this.
No, I
philosophy
hadn't
before.
either. Because
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, because he's a guy who he has the might makes right philosophy to a degree where like he's been able to keep control all this time, but he also knows that he can't hold it forever. And that someone will take him down at some point, and he wants the honorable death. He wants that to happen.
But he also is bored by the life of a ruler.
Yeah.
Which is also something, as I don't know how good or bad of a ruler he really is.
I don't know. I don't know how oppressive he is.
Especially because we're told that this world is like all violence world. Also,
yeah,
they don't swear for like half the movie, and then it feels like a different writer came in, and that's weird.
It's not half, but it was a long time before we got our first F-bomb, and I was like, oh, we're doing that.
Yeah, because it was rated R, and we were like, oh, this movie didn't need to be rated R.
I don't agree with that. I think it's violent enough.
You think it's violent enough? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
But
it's easy. Sorry, it's easy to see where you're coming from
because it's so stylized. Violence.
It's so stylized. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't say that with Sin City.
No,
that's got to be rated R, even the stylized.
And Sin City does not have many swear words. It does not have an F-bomb period. Right. Very intentionally.
But like you made me watch that alone gets you an R.
Yeah, yeah. This movie needed a George Lucas thing. It needed, okay, I have this massive script. Now I need to boil it down to its component parts and make it as good as it could possibly be. It needs to be the Star Wars to Star Wars. Mm-hmm. That's what it needed, and it could have been amazing. It doesn't have
another pass.
Yeah.
Somebody should have come in and reworked it.
Yeah, yeah. Or just go to your friends and, like George Lucas did, and was like, does this work? Can we...
It's weird. It got tedious, but then I was more with it by the end. Mm-hmm. Like you said.
Yeah, if we could just cut out the middle.
Mm-hmm. There's a fan edit to be made of
There is a fan edit to be made of this movie.
But it still has the problem of really inconsistent transitions. So, there's no rhyme or reason to like when we're doing animated transitions to when we're doing silhouettes.
It does this thing where like it wants to never settle. It wants to keep throwing new ideas at you and things and visual motifs you've never seen before. The problem is, you're like, well, that's weird, and then we never do that again, and it's hard to.
Yeah.
I understand. I get the idea, right? Like you just want to keep messing with the audience. You're like, oh, I've never seen that before. Oh, I've never seen that before. But
and like you can't classify this movie.
By the time you get to all the weird transitions, the scenes in between the transitions are much more typical. So the transitions are weird. Like if this is a movie that just kept evolving, like I've never seen this, I've never seen this, I've never seen this, that would be really interesting. But it's not that.
Well, maybe it doesn't cut off it enough either. You know, maybe sit in one place for too long.
No, it's like someone that doesn't understand like what. Like you just need one cool transition. You can use that a couple of times. I don't need a cool transition every time you transition. I don't know. It's weird because it kept inventing, but then it started to feel dull in that.
Yeah, no, that's weird.
We're like, oh, here's another thing you're doing. Okay.
Well, and
your first act is for that, and then you flesh out everything you're doing stylistically and visually and
yeah, I kept wondering if I was supposed to read any of that, and then I was like, no, you're just doing stuff.
Yeah, and that's also the thing. Really, it feels like a real artsy movie that isn't actually about that much. It's not really saying anything that's smart.
It is.
Yeah. It feels a little. It feels a lot pretentious. But then it's so goofy. It's like, well, this can't possibly be pretentious. But I think it is.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was Bunraku.
Yeah, but that was a really interesting experience.
It was.
I am kind of glad we looked at it.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad I finally watched it. I probably liked it more if I'd seen it when I was younger. Like if I saw this at like 14.
Yeah.
I probably liked this a lot more.
Lone Wolf Jedi, we appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks for the request there. I don't know what it is. Request is one of those words I can't always grab onto. Do you have that with certain words where I'm like I can think of suggestive before I can think of request?
I think you said suggestion at the beginning.
Yeah, I'll do that because sometimes request doesn't immediately come to my brain. I don't know what that is, but yeah, it's weird. Anyway, our next request.
For suggesting with your money.
Yes. I heavily suggest that since I'm giving you this donation. Once again, I want to say if you donated for a request this show and we didn't get to it, we will get to you next time. And we have we had lots of stuff to do. There was no doing every single thing, of course, but we're gonna continue to try to get everybody month to month, even though we're doing these every 3 weeks. So we will get to you next time if you didn't get one this time, if it has been a couple shows, you'll get 1, 2 in a row also. So that's an important thing to say. So you'll get to this month and the one right after it. Anyway, I just want to make sure nobody gets shafted. Okay, so Assuming we can hang on to the month-to-month thing, and if not, I will eventually change it and say, okay, every other show, and hope that that's not a deal breaker for folks, but I'm trying to hang on to the month-to-month thing. Okay, the last thing I wanted to talk about today is another request from Magpie. Magpie requested Ned Kelly. Have you heard of this movie? Okay, so Ned Kelly is actually a movie that's been that's based on a true story that's been done a few times. And the first movie, which is interesting because this one is based on a novel, I forget the name of it, that came out in '91, that is just about this real life thing that happened in the 1870s in Australia. It's Magpie, so he's giving me more Australian things, and it's about a bank robber who is one of the most notorious criminals of that period, but is to some people today thought of as the Australian Robin Hood. And the other people is thought of this horrible murderer guy, and people can't agree on whether he should be thought of as a folk hero or not.
I've either heard of this person, or there's another one later that I've heard referred to as Australian Punisher.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
There might be another one that has a very similar situation.
This guy's definitely not like the Punisher.
Okay.
He's a lot more like Robin Hood, because he did kill people, but that wasn't his main MO. It was more of a wrong place, wrong time. You had to die because self-defense, but
whoever
I was doing a criminal activity in the first place.
Is played by who's Bane?
Oh, really? Tom Hardy?
Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy does a movie about whoever I'm thinking of.
That's interesting because Ned Kelly is played by Heath Ledger.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So this is Heath Ledger, and Orlando Bloom plays one of his brothers.
Oh, this is like a big movie.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was an Australian-made movie, as far as I understand.
It
only made $6 million, and I'm pretty sure it was an Australian movie because on Wikipedia it said domestically it did $4.5 or $5 million, and then it only did or whatever it was. It did pretty well there relatively, but here it didn't even break $1 million.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure domestically met Australia.
Okay.
Anyway, but. So this is based on a novel based on that true story, and then there have been a couple other movies just based on the history, and interestingly and importantly, the first movie based on this was a silent film in 1906 that was the first dramatic full-length film.
Interesting.
Based on this story.
Full length at that point is 60 minutes?
Which I didn't know, yeah.
Because most of the Universal horror movies are 60 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know how long it was, but it's apparently the first narratively driven feature film.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which I didn't know. It's really interesting. So anyway,
that would have been real topical at that time.
Yeah, I wish you'd watch this with me. I think this would have been kind of more your movie than mine. It's very much a Western. And it's that period, and obviously, just because we're not in America, it's still that period, and there's still those sensibilities in different parts of the world. And so the idea is Ned Kelly is a guy who just has not been able to get a break his whole life, and it's a real kind of class warfare thing where he is an he's an Irish immigrant to Australia. And his father was, I think, also a criminal, and he is kind of looked down on because of that, and probably also because he's an immigrant. Although I couldn't get a real good sense of that. Part of the issue I have with this movie is not knowing the history and not living there. I felt like I needed to do research to fully understand what I was looking at. I didn't feel like this did a great job of delivering the story to people who were completely not familiar with it. It's not terrible, but I needed a little bit of legwork. I had to read a little bit before I fully got what I was looking at, and it comes off very much like this is a story everybody knows. It really watches like that.
Which is probably true in Australia.
Yeah, probably true in Australia, but I didn't have that because I wasn't familiar with this.
So I felt a little bit left out. American film.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is, and it's difficult because you're close to that material and you know all that, right? But it's but so he gets in trouble and thrown in jail a couple of times for associations with not good people. And then when he finally gets out, he's trying to live above board, and he's trying to walk the straight and narrow, but the cops hate him. And he's always getting in trouble with the cops, even when he's not doing anything wrong. And they just keep blaming him for things like stealing a horse that he didn't steal. And at one point, he makes the mistake of stepping in the film. I'm not sure if this is what really happens in real life, but if this is the actual catalyst for this, makes for good drama. I would have to look it up. I don't know. But there's a romance here that I'm not sure how much of is in real life or not, because I didn't do that much research. But as I've always said, if the story's good, I'm not going to be miffed unless it's pretending like it's giving you exactly what really happened, and this is based on a novel, so it's already a somewhat fictitious thing, if it's based on a novel. But anyway, so I don't know how accurate the novel was, but
based on a
just
novel inspired by true events.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like you are like 3 times removed at this point, but there's this cop that's hitting on a girl that I think is in his family, because they all live in a house together, and he and sorry if I'm getting that wrong, I'm not totally sure, but anyway, they're in a bar, and this cop Fitzpatrick is hitting on this girl, and he's not taking no for an answer, and so Ned Kelly comes up and kind of stands in between them, and that kind of puts him in the crosshairs. And so later, so now, Fitzpatrick's out for blood. And later, he comes to their house, and he's he's once again trying to woo her, and she is having none of it, and actually won't even come to the door, right? And he's spurned by the whole family, and he causes a scene, and he pulls his gun on them, and there's a whole incident, and he claims that he got shot, and nobody, I can't remember if anybody shoots. I don't think anybody shoots him, but he claims that he gets shot, and he's taking advantage of his station. And like I said, a lot of this is about class warfare and about taking advantage of having authority, right? And the thing is, at least in the film, because again, I don't know if this is in real life, Ned Kelly wasn't even there because he was busy having sex with this girl who is well above his station, who she would be completely humiliated and kind of lose her life, such as as it is, if anybody ever knew that she was with this guy, right? So you have that drama. And that's the part that I'm not sure is really happened. That's the big part that just reading a cursory history I didn't see anything about, but maybe that did happen. I'm not sure. And anyway, so long story short, Fitzpatrick blames him for an attempted murder, and his mother goes to prison for partially helping him to try to kill Fitzpatrick. And of course none of this happened, and he wasn't even there, but it's his word against the cops. And so now Ned Kelly is trying to figure out how he's going to get his mom out of prison, and he's wanted now. And so he says, weirdly, almost like Megamind, okay, I guess I'm a bad guy. I guess like nobody's gonna let me be what I want to be. I have been cast as the bad guy, so I'm going to be the bad guy. So he and his brothers form a gang, the Ned Kelly gang, and they become bank robbers. And the rest of the movie is kind of is kind of a heist thing, but it's more of a bad guys on the run movie, and it kind of turns into a Custer's Last Stand sort of thing, where they're on the run from the police for a really long time, and they kind of play it like like Old West rules, and they kill anyone they have to, but only if they have to, and that doesn't happen much, but it does. And then one of the really famous things, I guess, in the history is that they all put on makeshift suits of armor, and they do kind of the sort of the Back to the Future 3 thing, except they don't hide it, but they have, like, you know, that sort of bulletproof vest, right? And they put on these, you know, crude makeshift helmet things, and they come out of a house. They finally get found out. They come out of a house, and they get, you know, shot several times, and they don't fall down, and the you know the cops for a minute are kind of freaked out by that. And I guess that's one of, like, the big images. That's sort of like his Robin Hood suit, you know, and. But ultimately, he gets captured, and he doesn't die there. He ends up being hanged. But importantly, interestingly, they get a whole bunch of signatures from people to try to get him to get off and not be hanged, because he's already become this big folk hero, and he's thought of as kind of a leader of a revolution, because he's you know, he's against this kind of oppressive class, and feels like he was wrong and kind of being forced into this life in the first place. And so he's leading a movement, and there's kind of a question as to how much of it was really you know an intended movement, and how much of it is just you know, this guy who had bad luck and is on the run. And that's part of, you know, why there's a question of how he should be remembered. And then there's like 32,000 signatures to keep him alive, but he still ends up getting hanged. And Eric, he was only 25 when he died. Like, just imagine doing all of that by 25 and then getting killed by the state. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much just given you a synopsis of the film and the history of it. But it's really interesting, and that's if you watch the movie, that it depicts those events. And I don't feel like I get in Ned Kelly's head enough. Like, I feel like there is a better, with respect to Heath Ledger, because he gives an amazing performance, and Orlando Bloom does too, and he's a really good cast.
That's surprising. I'm not the biggest Orlando Bloom fan. Yeah,
I'm not either, but he's good in it. But I feel like there is maybe a better movie based on these events to be made. But like I said, the performance is really good. I think the script is not as great as the production. I just feel like there could be a little bit more depth to that character. But maybe it doesn't want to get too close to him, because it would feel like it was coming down one way or another on that question. I think that's maybe part of why it does that. But I'm glad I watched it. I mean, I think it's a pretty decent biopic.
Interesting.
But that was Ned Kelly. So I'm learning more about Australia. Again, there's some fun things in that about the railroad.
Kind of
they derail a train. And that's all stuff that really happened. But I'm sorry.
Because that was kind of a thing with the last one, with the last Australian film we watched. We were like, yeah, the performance is really good. I don't know if the script's exactly up to the actors.
It was kind of similar to it in that way. I think it's got better production values than that did. It feels real authentic.
Interesting.
But anyway, so that's going to be it for us for how we felt about Eric. We got all of our movies knocked out. So
are you feeling it, or are you not feeling it?
I'm gonna give it. I'm feeling it on that one.
Sure,
definitely. Folks, thanks again for watching. We sure appreciate it. We're gonna move on now in the omnibus to Primetime Crisis. So if you are watching the playlist, it will just continue on to there. And if you're not, find the playlist and watch Primetime Crisis if you are so inclined. And otherwise, we sure appreciate you watching this video. We will see you again next time. And those of you that are continuing on, we'll see you again here in just a second after a little break. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.